Hope everyone is well and surviving this cold front here. Anyway, I think as you guys saw the announcement, we're announcing Mike Foltynewicz on a one-year deal here. Certainly excited. I think he's adding some innings, stabilizing the rotation. We're hopeful that he'll bounce back to the pitcher he was a couple years ago with the Braves. Obviously, a winning track record there, has performed well. Last year, a little bit of a down year. 2019 had spurts where he pitched well, but we've seen him throw this offseason. We're excited about where he is. We've talked to him. He's excited to bounce back, confident, feels healthy, and I think we're excited to have him join our staff. I'll be happy to answer any questions you guys have.
Questions, Levi?
Hey, Chris. So I've been trying to do a little back reading, and one of the things I saw was that his velocity dipped from 96, 97 down into the low 90s, and then one of the things that I saw suggested with it was that there was maybe like a weight loss issue that caused that. Have you guys been able to identify what the issue was there and what steps have been taken to make that?
Levi, yeah, it's certainly something we looked into. Obviously, given where his velocity was, in the mid 90s and dropping down to the lower 90s, obviously impacted his performance. I think Mike can probably speak to that a little bit better as the exact causes. I don't want to speculate too much there. We're confident based on seeing him throw that his velocity is on the way back. He was looked really good in the workout that we saw. He was sitting in the low 90s at that point, and it's still only January. So I think we're confident that as he kind of gets innings under his belt, his velocity is going to bounce back. His sinker looked good, slider was solid. So I think we're confident that and the motivation is there. He's worked extremely hard to get to where he is. I think that you pair all that together, I think he's in good position to bounce back.
Kennedy?
Hey, I guess when y'all saw him throw out at Georgia Tech, were there any things that you were worried about and what, really stood out to you that made you, want to make this signing?
Well, yeah, I think the biggest concern, Kennedy, is, how his stuff is going to look, how he's going to bounce back. I think that we all want to see the pitcher he was in 2018 with the velocity and the heavy sink that he demonstrated that made him successful in Atlanta. I think that velocity drop certainly was indicative of whether it was a change in mechanics or, physical issues he was dealing with. But I think that ultimately where we saw him in he was 90 to 92 in that workout. I think that gave us a lot of hope that he's going to bounce back. That's going to continue to climb. He said the effort level in that workout was not even close to 100%. So I think that as he kind of builds up, gets arm strength, that's going to continue to improve, and that sinker will continue to progress to where we think it'll be, when the season starts. And
do you guys see him, slotting in the rotation? Where do you see him coming out of the bullpen, wherever?
Yeah, we've started him to we signed him to start. We expect that if we get the Mike Foltynewicz that we think he can be, he's going to be a very good pitcher in our rotation. Obviously he has to come in and prove that he's healthy, that he's strong, that his sinker, his stuff is playing well. But from what we've seen, what our expectation is that he's going to fit right in our rotation and give us really, really solid innings.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, let's go, Devin.
Chris, he had 3 big league innings last year. You guys have to find 1,400 innings over the course of the season. As you looked at protocols and everything regarding preparation during spring training, how concerned are you about being able to actually get guys in position where you'll be able to tackle what you need to do to get through the season healthy?
I think it's a concern for 30 clubs right now, Evan. I mean, we're really in an unprecedented season, coming off a 60-game schedule where almost no pitchers in MLB, at least on the starting pitcher side, reach their innings pitched thresholds. So certainly it's unprecedented in terms of that, but I think as we kind of shore up the roster here and look at it, we do have some depth. I think we'll try to get creative in how we utilize these guys, how we manage workloads throughout the season. I think certainly with Kyle and Kohei Arihara that we have some, solid workload there that we can depend on. Folty, we hope will add to that. Then there's a group behind them that should be capable, who've put up solid innings in the past that we think we can rely on. And then, just continuing to evaluate the market and see what else is out there, maybe add one or two more guys on NRIs that can come in and also provide innings and compete for jobs. I think that the opportunity with the Texas Rangers on the pitching front is good. And I think that it should be attractive to other pitchers if there are some that are looking to sign and come in and compete.
From a mechanical standpoint, if the first 2 weeks are potentially 5-inning games, and you may have 7-inning games depending on what you work out with guys, and there's no split squads and there's no minor league camp, where do you get innings from? I mean, are you just going to have simulated games on the backfield every day? Is that adequate?
Yeah, I think that I certainly think that having backfield games in a controlled environment will be beneficial. I think that and again, I think those 5 and 7-inning games are mutually agreed to between managers. So I think that, we can always, based on what the inning needs are, adjust that. But look, we're still trying to figure this out and map it out. We got the protocols on Monday. We're sorting through it and trying to figure out the best way to structure this to, one, have everybody safely and healthy once the season starts, prepared. But secondly, put these guys in the best position for success. And I think that we will probably have a slower buildup than normal. It's got, I think a communication to the players is going to be that competition is going to be more on the second half of spring training. We want to get these guys built up safely so that they're in the best position to compete as spring training ramps up.
And so how likely is it that when you talk about creativity, how likely is it now that you approach the regular season with the idea of either a non-traditional, like a 6-man rotation, or some kind of piggyback slot somewhere in there as another way of kind of building these guys up and maintaining things?
Yeah, Evan, that's something that we're exploring. I think that as we kind of identify our personnel as we get through spring training and determining what the proper workload is going to be for them on the season, but also what optimizes their ability to succeed each outing. And certainly we're open to creative ideas. We've seen other organizations do it, whether it's Tampa or LA or many others who've done sort of a piggyback tandem rotation. I think that we'll explore that based on the personnel, how guys look in spring training, and evaluate what's the best way to attack this season for the Texas Rangers.
Hey, last thing is, and you're in a unique position because you were so key last year in having a part in coming up with these protocols. And a lot of these protocols, I assume, are based off of what ended up being put in place for last year. Is there anything that, from your perspective, in going through the protocols, that is still a concern in terms of things that haven't been addressed?
Oh, Evan, that's a great question. I think the key thing to remember here is that the virus is still in charge, and we can try to protect against all of this. But in the end, the virus is in charge. There's always going to be community risk. There's just certain ways that no matter what we do, as many protections as we put in place, they're just things we can't guard against. And so I think it's just continuing to be as vigilant as possible to make sure that we take every precaution necessary to create as safe an environment as possible. And then at some point there's an element of luck, and you hope that, we don't have any outbreaks and we can get through spring training, but certainly a lot of that is beyond the control of any one person. So collectively, we've got a great medical team that's working very, very hard to set up the proper environment in spring training. And look, we'll get through it together, but there are going to be challenges. I think there's going to be things that are unforeseen right now that'll pop up, and we'll mitigate those as they occur.
All right, I've taken up way too much time. I'll hand it off.
Yes, you have. We'll go to Jeff Wilson, please.
Hey, Chris. So how many innings do you think Mike can realistically pitch after only 3 1/3 last year, not including what he did at the alternate site?
We've asked this question to our doctors and our medical team, and there's no real data that suggests that he can't approach really inning totals that he's previously done throughout his career. I think it'd be one thing if he was coming off a major surgery or a major injury, but physically he's healthy. And if he's pitching well, I don't think we're going to put a certain number or limit on what he can do this season.
All right. And I guess kind of
I'll add to that.
Yeah.
With all of our pitchers, we will continue to monitor everybody and evaluate their stuff and their performance throughout the season. Again, to put them in the best positions to be successful. And if there are warning signs for any one pitcher, independent of their workload, we certainly are going to be very vigilant in that regard as well.
Okay. And then when you're talking about guys like Dunning and Cody and guys of that ilk, will they be on optional assignment when they're not with the big league club, or will there's talk of an alternate site? What do you think is best for them? Because it's hard to simulate game activity across the street.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, and that's one of the challenges of this season. It was a major challenge last year, and so if we start with the alternate site, which is our expectation at this point, I think that we will have to do as good a job as possible keeping those pitchers built up in a competitive environment and ready to step into the big leagues at any point.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
DJ?
Hey, Chris. Wanted to ask you, you mentioned that sinker for Foltynewicz. His career year that he had in 2018, it looks like he was much more four-seam heavy. Like he was about 46% on the four, or 40% on the four-seamer and only about 16% on the two-seamer. But then these last 2 years, it has seemed to have evened out a little bit. Is that kind of the direction that you expect this to go in, where he maybe is becoming a little bit more of a sinker ball guy compared to the four-seam usage he had a couple of years ago?
Yeah, CJ, it's a great question. I think that some of it's going to depend on how his stuff looks. I mean, if he's in the mid-90s with his four-seamer, I think that certainly he'll rely on it more. If it's slightly below there, his sinker still is very good. We like the way it looked in the workout, but it's going to be kind of dependent upon how he looks coming into camp. But I think that our expectation is that his velocity will continue to increase, and as it does, I think he'll rely on the four-seamer more. But again, I think that sometimes you have to adapt, you adjust a little bit based on what's working. This as a former pitcher, and I certainly had to do it throughout my career. And but if the velocity is where it was in 2018, I would expect the percentage usage of each pitch to be probably comparable to how he did it then.
And how was he as far as maybe what he was looking for from you guys? Was it just about the opportunity to start?
Yeah, that's the opportunity was really important to him. That's one of the things that really appealed. He's not afraid of competition. I mean, he's got a winning pedigree. He knows what it takes, and he's hungry. He wants to prove himself, and the opportunity to come in and do that here really appealed to him. And I think it fits exactly what we're trying to do in creating a competitive environment. And I think he's going to fit well for us.
Hey, last one. I wanted to circle back. I forgot to ask this the other day on Elvis. As the shortstop market, which was really busy this offseason, kind of developed, were you guys kind of sitting back and waiting until those bigger pieces has moved? And we saw Lindor get traded and Didi Gregorius seemed like he was the last piece, and then to look and see which teams needed a shortstop and then engaged?
That's a great question, because I came in kind of halfway through free agency. So I can't speak to truly what the strategy was, at the beginning of the offseason. But I think that, in evaluating, I will say that I don't think we weren't shopping Elvis. This trade kind of came to us and it made sense for both sides. So I don't think there was really a strategic element in terms of sitting back, waiting for the shortstop market to develop before trying to put Elvis out there. I mean, certainly Elvis has been a great player, a very historic player for the Texas Rangers. But I think the opportunity to continue his career at shortstop made the most sense for him. And certainly, for us, the return we got, we're very excited about.
Awesome. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'll go to Ray Glyer. Go ahead, Ray. Good to hear from you.
Hey, John. Hey, Chris. I'm in Atlanta. Have you gotten to the bottom of what happened to Folty's velo, and are you sure you can keep that from happening again? It happened twice up here?
Ray, we're that's still to be determined. We're confident based on where we've seen him this offseason that his velocity is on the way back. I mean, if I'll let Mike speak to that in a little bit. I don't want to speculate too much about what he's gone through. He can speak to that, but I think that where he is in terms of how he looks physically, where he is mentally, what he's communicated to us, how he's ready to compete. I think we're confident in the pitcher, and that's why we signed him.
Thank you.
Anything else for Chris at this
I
point?
see Evan hand up again.
Evan, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for noticing. Going back to that thing on the protocols, Chris, like the one thing that I thought about is, let's say you have a breakout in camp and you've got to stop activities for a couple of days. How does that impact the team?
I mean, Evan, you went to the worst case hypothetical, didn't you? Look, it's one of my concerns. I think it's a concern across all 30 clubs is that if there is an outbreak in camp, how is that going to impact our ability to get ready? And I think some of that will depend on who's impacted. I mean, we're going to strategically place players throughout the clubhouse and the lockers, so that we're not grouping any one position together. The hope is that, all of our catchers don't get it at the same time, or all of our pitchers. We can't predict it all at this point. We'll have to navigate that as it comes. But in the meantime, we're taking as many precautions as possible to try to mitigate the risk and hope that we get through camp healthy.
Okay, and then just to clarify on the alternate site, the Round Rock people seem to indicate that AAA season is expected to go off like early April as usual. So how would you use the alternate site?
The commissioner will make this announcement depending on the state of the virus, I think. So I think we have to be prepared if we do go to an alternate site. Our hope is that AAA starts on time and that we are operating in a normal AAA environment, but that's still to be determined. So we're planning for both right now. I think that if we do operate an alternate site, it would likely be next door, similar to how it was last year. But that is not going to come until, I think, 15 days before opening day.
Hey, and then the last thing on pitchers, you talked about returning to previous innings thresholds. I'm just looking at the roster. Outside of Cody, would there be anybody that's healthy right now that would have like a pitch limit, like an innings pitch limitation on them for 21?
I think with the younger pitchers, Evan, we want to be cognizant that this is coming off a season where they didn't pitch a full year. We'll monitor it, but I don't think we're putting strict numbers on any one pitcher. But we will have guidelines or guardrails based upon what they've done throughout their career.
Okay, John. There you go, John.
Okay, thank you, Evan. Jeff has a question. We've still got a little time, so before Folty calls in. So Jeff, go ahead.
Chris, how do you guys plan on working the catching situation with Heim now? I mean, I think everybody knows or senses that Huff will start in the minor leagues, but I'm just curious. I mean, Heim's not exactly a seasoned veteran, so how do you guys see that playing out?
Well, I think that really camp will determine that. I think that how camp goes, it's one of the themes for this season is competition, and the guys coming in earning the opportunity to compete for their playing time. And I think that's exactly what we anticipate. So I expect camp, the spring training will kind of work through that. We may look to add another NRI at catcher, but that's still to be determined. And I think that we'll get a lot of answers as we get started in spring training.
Okay. And then also with the extra roster spot this year, I mean, the 26th man, do you think it will be for a pitcher considering the state of the innings and all that stuff? But you guys also seem to have a glut of outfielders that could need roster spots potentially.
Yeah, again, I think that we'll work through that, and some of that will take care of itself as spring training goes. It's hard to predict. There may be times in the season where we carry 12 pitchers. There may be times where we carry 14. It's hard to determine at this point. It'll kind of be need based. And, again, there are going to be challenges throughout the year. And we'll just have to remain flexible and work through them as they present themselves.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, we good? Levi, you got one?
Yeah, sorry, I don't want to drag you too far into the weeds with about 6 minutes left here, but I'm just curious. You said, monitoring the pitchers as far as workload and things go, and I might be asking for more details than anyone else will find interesting, but I'm curious what you guys are using to monitor. Is that like the Modus wearables, or what sort of metrics do you guys have for that monitoring?
Yeah, I think it'll be more the Hawkeye data, the in-game Hawkeye data, and Kiner-Falefa data that we get post-game. I think just monitoring that, analyzing the pitchers and their stuff, their movement, and then also subjective data from, or opinions from the medical staff as well, how guys are feeling, how they're bouncing back. Throughout the organization, it's one of the areas we really want to continue to improve. I think it's the way the industry is trending, and that monitoring really try to monitor every throw in between outings to understand exactly how guys are recovering and put them in the best positions to succeed, so that every time out they feel at their best and can perform at their best, and or close there too. Maybe you're not always you don't always feel perfect. I know that from experience, but we try to get these guys built up as close to 100% as possible every time out.
Cool. Thank you.